In this video, we will show you how to replace your fuel pump strainer on this Toyota Camry. This will be located inside of the fuel tank, accessed through under your rear seat. Let's get into it. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. Since we're going to be dealing with fuel-related items, we want to make sure that we release fuel pressure from inside of the system. To do that, we'll make our way along the driver's side of the engine compartment, right alongside of the battery. We're going to dislodge this cover from the fuse box. There's a small locking tab on the front there. You can just pull that away as well. Now we'll be looking at the legend in this area. We're looking right about where my thumb is here. You can see a 15 amp fuse and it says EFI, electronic fuel injection. We're going to remove that from the fuse compartment. You can use some small pliers for this. We'll just take hold of it, give it a little tug up and out. A quick inspection and we'll set it aside temporarily.
The next thing you have to do is hop inside the passenger compartment. You're going to attempt to start the vehicle. What you may find is it starts and stalls out. Otherwise, it might just keep on cranking. Crank, crank, crank. Either way, that's what we're looking for. At that point, we've evacuated the fuel pressure from the system and we can continue.
Now that we've released fuel pressure from in the system, let's reattach our 15 amp fuse into the original position. We'll press it in, listen for a click. Protect that area with its cover. Continue on to your negative battery terminal. We'll use a 12mm on the mounting nut here. We'll turn that just enough times that we can remove the terminal end from the battery. A quick inspection and set it aside so it's making no contact. Let's make our way inside the rear of the passenger compartment. We're going to remove the rear seat. To do this, you should be able to just take hold of it and give it a light tug up. I got one side there. Now we'll slide this right out of place. With the seat out of the way, we'll be paying attention in this area. You're going to find a trap door with a wiring harness leading through it. Before we start removing any of the hardware holding this down, let's make our way to the center rubber plug. Go ahead and take hold of that, and we'll just gently dislodge this. After that's dislodged from the shield itself, we'll continue on with a Phillips head screwdriver to remove all of the hardware. My application has 3 mounting screws. We'll take these right out of here. Last one in this corner. Now we can remove the shield, but before we do, we'll just go ahead and take this rubber grommet and press it right down and through. Now we should be able to start lifting up on this to have a peek underneath. To disconnect the electrical connector, you're going to have a locking tab. I'm going to use a flat blade screwdriver. Just press in on it right along here. Lift this up and out of position. A quick inspection for corrosion. We'll set that aside. Let's set that cover aside. Now we can focus along this side here. We're going to start removing our 2 fuel lines. We have the fuel pressure line, which should have a fitting right along here. This just has a rubber hose and a couple clamps, but typically you would want to unscrew the fitting from the line and then set that aside. Before I start with that one though, I always like to go to the return. This one's just held in place with a clamp. That's pretty common on these. We'll use a flathead or whatever size you need. It's probably a 1/4 inch. Slide that down the hose or up the line, whichever way you want to go. We'll remove the hose from this area. Just press it right on off of there. A quick inspection, we can set that aside. Now continuing along here, as I mentioned, you would want to release this fitting. You can do that by using a 14mm wrench. Turn it counterclockwise and separate it. If you have a rubber hose like ours here, you want to confirm that it is fuel rated, of course. Something like this is considered temporary. We're just going to go ahead and get this off of here and continue with our installation. There we are. Once again, we're sliding it off, a quick inspection of the hose, and we'll set it aside. Along the top of the fuel tank, we're going to use some compressed air so we can remove as much of the debris from this area as possible. With the area clean, we can start removing the mounting hardware. You're going to find that you have 8 Phillips head screws making their way all the way around this, holding it down to the fuel tank. We'll use our Phillips head screwdriver on these, make our way all the way around. Last one here. Now we're going to have a collection receptacle so we can start removing this from the area. We'll bring it over the collection receptacle so we minimize the amount of fuel that gets on the interior of the vehicle. Let's get this over to the bench. Now over on the bench, we can start removing the fuel strainer from your fuel pump. To do this, we want to carefully dislodge the fuel pump from the bracket that it's mounted into. The bracket makes its way all the way down and along the bottom area here. To do this, take hold of the bracket and the pump and we'll gently try to separate them, pulling the pump away. Once you have that pulled away, sometimes the gasket along the bottom will come out of there. We'll just go ahead and take hold of that, give it a quick inspection, and set it aside. We will be reusing this. Continuing from there, you're going to find that the pump strainer has a small clip on it. We're going to have to dislodge that, and we can pull the strainer right on off of there. Let's be careful not to lose this clip. Just pry it right off of there with a small pocket screwdriver or pick. A quick inspection of that and we'll set it aside. Go ahead and take hold of the strainer and we'll start removing it. For this, you can use a small pocket screwdriver still or just use your hands, whatever's best for you, but there is going to be a seal holding it in place. There it is, friend. Now we can start installing our fuel pump strainer. For this, we'll take it and get it in position. You want to ensure that you have the port aligned, but you also have the locating tab aligned as well. Twist this as necessary. We'll line it up, press it on there as far as possible. Once you feel as though you have that pressed on as far as possible, you need to reinstall the protective clip right along the bottom here to prevent this from falling out. It's a very small clip. We're going to slide it on there and then press it on with a small tool. Typically you can use a 1/4-inch socket if necessary, or pretty much anything small enough to press it. Try to get it to stay on there. I removed the bit from my screwdriver. That should fit directly over this. Now I'm just going to apply pressure holding this in place. Grab hold of the strainer, give it a wiggle. We're trying to tug it off of there. Obviously, we don't want to break it in any way, but we do need to ensure that it's properly secured and it will not come off while we're driving down the road. We'll continue on to our rubber grommet here. That's going to fit right in this area, and at this point, we can start swinging this down into the proper position. You should find that the rubber grommet fits directly inside this area along the bottom of the fuel pump assembly. Let's get this over to the vehicle. Back in the vehicle, before we reinstall our pump assembly, we want to make sure that we remove the seal, give it a close inspection, and then we're going to clean up the fuel tank itself as well. As we're cleaning things, we're trying to wipe away from the inside of the fuel tank. We don't want to get any debris in there. Now that we have it cleaned, let's go ahead and reinstall our seal along the top of the tank. You can also put this along the bottom of the fuel pump assembly. We'll start getting this down into position. We'll start with the level sensor and the strainer. As we bring this down, we want to align our alignment tabs and all of our mounting bolt holes. We'll continue on pressing this down as we continue. In this position, it's time to start in all 8 of our Phillips head screws. Do not tighten any of them until they're all started in. Okay, they're all started in. Let's go around and make sure they're all nice and tight. Now we can start reconnecting our fuel lines and our electrical connector. For this line right here, it typically has a fitting on it which will screw into another fuel line which leads down to the engine eventually. In our application, somebody cut this, so I'm going to be using what I have. If your application still has the fitting set up, you want to go ahead and use your wrenches and make sure it's nice and tight. Since mine does not have the fitting set up, I'm going to continue on with 2 clamps and we'll make sure those are tight. As you continue on, make sure each one of these lines is completely secured, otherwise you're going to have a fuel leak along the top of the fuel tank here, and that can be very dangerous. We've got our next hose here. Slide this into position. Get the clamp so it's showing hose on both sides, of course. Tighten this up. Now that we've confirmed both of those lines are properly secured in place, it's time for our electrical connector and our protective panel. Let's get this electrical connector in place. The locking tab faces towards the passenger side of the vehicle. Press it down, give it a light tug, make sure it's properly secured. We can continue on with our plate. I'm going to spin this around so everything's properly aligned. We'll give the rubber grommet a light tug up and through the port. Start in all 3 of your Phillips head screws and snug them up. Reinstall your rubber grommet. It's important to make sure you have a good seal in this area so no moisture or debris makes its way up inside your passenger compartment. Once you've confirmed everything's properly secured here, we can continue on with reinstalling the lower rear seat. When installing the rear seat, we want to ensure that we have access to all 3 of our seatbelt buckles. We never want to have a passenger inside of the vehicle if they can't be buckled up properly. Slide the rear in as far as you can, and we'll continue along the front. Along the front, we need to make sure that we press the seat down into the fully locked position. Let's make our way up under the hood. It's time to reconnect our negative battery terminal. We'll press this right on here as far as possible. Use our 12mm, make sure it's nice and tight. Okay friend, we finished our installation. At this point, go ahead and start up the vehicle. When you attempt to start it, you may find a long crank scenario. That's due to the fact that the fuel pump has to push fuel all the way back up to the fuel rail located at the engine. Once the vehicle is started, triple check for leaks, take your vehicle for a road test. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.